today, so that's too bad.
Talk about anything interesting?
Just random shit.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Satsu.
Yo.
Guess what?
Chicken butt.
No, you're not right.
Oh.
No, the correct answer is Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of TED Excellence, the show in which we watch things to learn things about stuff we didn't know. And we're coming to you live from our Corona bunker on the moon with Dogcat Fox, a Pepperjack, and joining me tonight, Satsu 2 cents. Hello, Satsu.
I am confuzzled.
Yes, once again, everyone, welcome to Thursday. Tempestuous Thursday. Yes, back once again. We're going to dive into the wonderful world of TED Excellence. Try to learn something. Let's see. Got my phone off. Got everything in place. Yes. Good evening, everyone. Satsu, how are you doing tonight?
Well, I was fine, but now I'm completely confused.
I don't know why you should be.
I guess when I saw the intro, I'm like, oh, he hit the wrong button. Holy shit. But apparently not. Apparently this is what we're doing today.
Yes, we're doing a TEDx. Just as we always would. I don't know what the confusion is. Hope everyone's doing well. So today's subject, if you couldn't tell by the title up above, is equity in education defined. Bridging the gap. Now, this is actually episode 2 of something, but I couldn't find episode 1. However, we're going to look at it. So, with that all being said, Satsu, are you ready to dive into the wonderful world of bridging the gap and defining equity in education?
I don't know. It is April 1st, so we'll see.
I have no idea what you're talking about. So let's dive in, everyone. I'll have a few seconds here for a sound test. You tell me if you can hear this, and then we will begin.
When we talk about racial equity.
Satsu, did you hear that?
Uh-huh.
Okay. So when we talk about racial equity, everyone in the chat, did you hear that? Let me know if you did. And then we'll continue. Let's see. While I'm here, let's say hello to a few people in the chat. Mashishu, hello. Genti Maxi, hello. Jaeger Pony, hello. Mr. Yes, hello. Mike R, hello. Always Lost on Nothing Else, hello. Theos, hello. Raziel, hello. Old Guy Gamer, hello. The Magister, hello. Zalba, hello. Sean Uli, hello. Roger Reynolds, hello. Jeanette E. Hellis, hello. Jonathan Peterson, hello. Roasted Opinions, hello. Beth Castleman, hello. Who else is here? And then chat jump because of course it did. Harbos Marbos, hello. Gulf City, Johnny Blaze, hello. Keenan, hello. Gulf City, Peterbilt Confederacy 379, hello. Ms. Slim 1, hello. Understatement, hello. Green Death, hello. The gayest person on YouTube, hello. Everybody hear that? Sounds fine by me, says Beth. Well, that's good enough for me. All right.
The way we define it is ensuring that your race does not define what experiences you're engaged in.
Well, as far as I'm told, one's race actually defines one's lived experience, or if I missed something over the course of the last 4 years.
It is literally the complete opposite is what they're usually pushing, so that's interesting.
Yeah, that was an interesting way to define equity. Okay, so I don't disagree with the notion, at least in spirit, because I don't know what else we're going to talk about yet, but that actually flies in the face of everything that I've been told.
I think it would be an understatement to say that we're living through life-changing and challenging times.
That would not be an understatement. That'd actually be a relatively accurate description.
So
what would be the correct description?
Well, maybe for some it's a little bit of an understatement, but for most, not really.
I guess if you're running around panicking and hiding in a corner, then just saying that is an understatement.
Or, I mean, if you've had several people actually die from COVID, it's probably not been a good year.
Yeah, that's probably true. God, I hope this music isn't copyrighted.
It's very loud.
Good Lord. I wish I'd pre-watched this, but I never pre-watch these things, so. What the? Okay. Are we going to get to a actual, like, thing here, or? Oh, okay. I was just 2 seconds away from it, apparently.
Was that Bridging the Gap?
What?
I saw a little image that looked like it was stating Bridging the Gap.
Yeah.
Ha!
There you go. Yeah, Bridging the Gap, episode 2, Defining Equity.
I knew it.
From Education Elements, a new channel that I am now subscribed to, because boy, howdy, they're in the running to be a direct competitor to the National Association of Independent Schools as my go-to for modern woke educational videos. Just looking at the titles on there, but anyway.
So welcome to episode 2, and
okay, Anthony Kim, founder and CEO, Education Elements, with a X hat on. I'm looking at the background. I always like looking to see if there's clues of things of what's going on here. Yeah, he's got a lot of lanyards or something in the background there. Okay, probably conventions.
Is he Korean?
I'm sure you're wondering.
So what?
I said, is he Korean?
I have no idea.
Okay.
Is that important to you, Satsu?
I mean, we are talking about race.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe you're thinking about what does equity actually look like? And
I am dying always to know what equity looks like, because it really is all about looks, as far as I've been told. But also, it is so ill-defined person to person that I'm always fascinated to know what the next definition is.
Yeah.
Is he holding a level for construction, like one of those bubble levels?
Maybe.
and in some cases,
I'm right. Oh, that'd be a good thumbnail shot right there, looking off into the distance.
Let me level with you for a moment.
Oh! Is he just holding it to hold it, or is he going to use it in an analogy like that?
It looks like he's about to build up an analogy real quick.
All right.
you might be thinking also, what can the future of schools look like, and how do we get there?
Yeah.
So where I'm going to take you today through my conversations with district leaders and policymakers is to talk about how they're approaching it and how they're thinking about incorporating equity into the way they work. So I'll see you in a few minutes.
Oh, I can't wait, Anthony. I am so excited. Aren't you excited?
Oh, yeah.
We're going to talk to district leaders about equity.
Oh, yeah.
And if we're talking about district leaders, I mean, I guess we'll find out if they give us some subheadings. I have to assume we're talking about public schools. And he didn't actually use the level for anything.
Uh-huh.
So, yeah.
So we are trying to work through how we can at least meet the needs of our most vulnerable students.
Now, I did not imagine we'd find ourselves on CNN tonight. I really didn't.
Oh.
Gregory Hutchings, Alexandria City Public Schools Superintendent. I just want to underline that word there, public schools. That may become important. Thank you, Mike R. Happy April Fool's Day, Lords of the Night and chat. Well, happy day to you too, Mike R. Thank you so much. All right.
Students, meaning our early learners, our students with special needs, our English learners, to make this possible.
When we talk about racial equity, the way we define it is ensuring that your race does not define what you become, what outcomes you have, what opportunities you receive, or what experiences you're engaged in.
Okay. Again, on that notion, I agree. Race should be effectively irrelevant in all of those things. So it should have no place and no basis in estimation or otherwise in schools, right? I mean, right? Fingers crossed. That's where we're going.
Yeah, fingers crossed, but you know how this goes. And we tackle that by making sure that your race is 100% the reason why you received.
Now, I'm wary because up here, uncomfortable conversations.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of uncomfortable conversations are we going to be getting into, I wonder?
In Alexandria City Public Schools.
How should it look when someone comes to visit a school that's doing this well? Like, how can you tell
Sure.
it's actually working?
I think first and foremost, you airing your dirty laundry and talking about the achievement gap and opportunity gap issues that are prevalent in every school division across this country right now.
Okay. Black, Hispanic, White, Asian, third grade. Okay. Notable achievement gaps exist among ethnic groups. Percent of low-income students that met or exceeded standard 2017. Black, Hispanic, White, Asian.
Are they ignoring the Asian part?
Well, the Asian, yeah, I know. I was about to say, well, they haven't said anything yet. But okay, so as I do with most of these things, I'll stipulate for the sake of argument that in English language arts specifically, that is the ascension from 3rd, 8th, and 11th grade. Okay. Now, obviously, in the absence of information elsewise, this is the result of racism.
Yeah,
Obviously.
they're airing their dirty laundry, as he says.
Right. Okay. So our speaker looks at these statistics and fills in as I call it, the God of the Gaps theory of statistical analysis. If you see a disparity between racial demographics, the explanation is racism. There's nothing else.
Right.
And it must be racism on the part of the schools, because that's where people learn things. So there we go.
I think you also have to be unapologetic around making people uncomfortable.
Why do people think that that's a positive strategy for anything? You know, I mean, being unapologetic for making people feel uncomfortable works in an interrogation room at a police station.
Mm-hmm.
But I constantly, over and over and over again, people just like extol the virtues of initiating uncomfortable conversations, seeing the advantages in making people uncomfortable.
Well, I mean, if you look at the rhetoric and the way that it's pushed out, that uncomfortability is inherent confirmation that you are automatically in the wrong, or else why else would the conversation make you uncomfortable?
That's true. That's true. Yeah. And if you feel uncomfortable, obviously you have something to defend against.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So making people feel uncomfortable is a part of the equation, because you have to make them feel guilty.
Because you're eliciting the truth from them. Okay.
You know, one thing that makes, any person typically very uncomfortable is when you begin to talk about the big word race.
Yes, especially depending on who you're talking about it to, since it is these days an implicit accusation of wrong thinking, wrong acting, and so on. Especially if race is irrelevant to the actual situation and you bring it up, yeah, it's going to be an uncomfortable conversation. Sort of like how if we're, I don't know, talking about what Satsu made for dinner last night, and all of a sudden I say, Satsu, let's talk about Alice in Chains. Satsu's going to be uncomfortable because he doesn't know the next thing about Alice in Chains.
Sure don't.
Yeah. So, and it has nothing to do with what we're talking about. So, anyway.
Right? People start squirming in their seats. They start getting nervous.
Yeah.
An anti-racist school division, they're going to be making people feel uncomfortable all the time.
Oh, thank God. Well, I want to go to that school. If there's one thing I appreciate more than anything else, it's where I know I can go to a place where I'm going to be uncomfortable because I'm a masochist, or maybe I'm meant to be a masochist. I'm meant to feel bad all the time, I'm guessing. Okay, so you want to encourage in your schools that race is not the determinative factor of someone's fate, of someone's worth, and on and on and on, but you want to encourage having uncomfortable conversations about race. Okay, thank you, Ebony Williams. How's the atmosphere on the moon tonight? Well, let's go to our resident weather expert of mooniterology. Dogcat Fox, how's the weather out there tonight? Wowie, wow, wow. Okay, well.
You could have just said lunarology.
Lunarology? Well, I was trying to think of like meteorology for the moon. I'm not quite sure what that would be.
Lunarology
sounds
right.
Meteorology.
Meteorology.
Meteorology. Okay. Yes, so the atmosphere is a comfortable and balmy, no oxygen, and boiling to death.
That's fun.
Yeah, well, I mean, one side's always facing the sun practically, so. Anyway.
Yay, moon death.
Like that's going to be the norm. That's going to be something that they're leaning into.
Oh, thank God. Lean into anti-racism and uncomfortable conversations. Oh my God.
You also want to be able to be, and what we're striving to be, is a school division that unapologetically calls people out on.
Okay, that sound is the video and not Satsu or I, just for reference. I can't do anything about that. So a school division that unapologetically calls people out. Sorry, I'll back up a little bit.
And that unapologetically calls people out on their racist actions and behaviors.
As defined by whom?
Them, of course.
Oh, I understand. What people, what actions. So you don't want race to be the determining factor, is someone's experience and someone's fate and someone's education, but you want to institute racial inquisitions in your public school district.
Yeah, what's wrong with that?
Actively call people out. Okay, yeah. Who determines when someone is acting or thinking or behaving in a racist way, by any chance? I wonder if they say.
And practices, period, right? And if we're saying we're going to be a school division that will not tolerate inequities or that will not tolerate racism, then we have to be unapologetic in calling people out on that, and unapologetic of letting people go who don't believe in that, you know?
Oh, so you're going to have an ideological culling of anyone who doesn't get with the program, of calling people out for racist whatever.
Presumed racist statements.
Yeah. Are we going to mention microaggressions by any chance? You know, those things that are completely interpretive most of the time, and offense taking and so on. And what is it? Okay, I keep hearing this. We are going to be unapologetic. Like, is that like, the impression I get whenever I hear somebody say this, like, just so you know, I'm being brave. I'm not going to make any excuses. I have no regrets in what I'm doing. All right.
Well, the thing about being unapologetic is it's kind of a shield. So it's like, even if you are doing something that you feel bad about, like, I don't know, racially discriminating against a group of people in order to fit your narrative, you need to be unapologetic about it, because everything you do is in the right, as long as you're doing it for this cause. There is no wrong. As long as you're doing whatever you're doing for our cause, you are always right. So always be unapologetic about it.
Yeah. Every time I hear that word used in context like this, I always think of it as, I am blessing myself with a level of certitude and righteousness that cannot be impeached.
Yeah, can't be impeached, can't be questioned. You shouldn't even think about it. It should be second nature to treat white people like shit. I mean, second nature to do the things that we're trying to teach you to do. Sorry, I almost let the truth slip. Shit.
Chef James, bingo card ready. Bingo card.
Shit.
Bingo card for what? This is a curriculum of fear. We're looking at education. Sorry, I don't know why you have a bingo card ready. This is an educational thing. There's no TEDx logo, so sorry. Okay.
And I think that is a very tough thing for many school divisions, to do across this country.
Very early on, we started a journey. The board, even in the interview process.
All right, real quick, Dr. Charles Dupree, Superintendent, Fort Bend, I'm assuming Independent School District by ISD, because I'm getting down the lingo of what an independent school district is. An independent doesn't necessarily, and oftentimes is not, a non-federally or public funded school district. So just remember, more likely than not, everybody we're talking to here is recipients in some way, shape, or form of federal funding, and consequently also should be under the rules, restrictions, and so on of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, specifically Title VI and several other things. But
we started a journey. The board, even in the interview process, said, what are you going to do about these schools that are not performing up to par?
Well, we're talking about up to par as far as like the racial demographic disparities, or up to par. Okay.
They're significantly below others.
Uh-huh.
And one of the things we found that the board pointed out to me is that the district at that time often talked about, well, we're outperforming the state and the nation and the region, but no one ever pointed out that the white kids and the Asian kids were significantly outperforming the Black and Hispanic kids and the poor kids.
Horse shit. Horse hockey. Pointing out racial disparities in educational outcomes has been going on for years and years. So unless your board of directors have just been ostriches with their heads underneath the sand for all that time, horse hockey.
Nobody's ever pointed it out, Scribe.
No, nobody's ever pointed it out. It's never come up before, ever. Give me
Nobody's talking about it.
Give me a break. Okay, well, okay. All right. I'll stipulate. Okay, you never occurred to you. No one ever pointed it out before. All right. You now know that there is a statistical disparity between racial demographics in your schools. How do you solve that problem? Are you going to tell us what your solution was?
And the special needs kids. And so early on in my tenure, the board and I agreed we were always going to put truth on the table, and we were going to look at all data for all kids. And I think that's the first step forward for anything, when the community who sees and knows that inequitable practices have been in place can see the governing body and the superintendent talking about these things publicly, it changes the dynamic of the organization.
Okay, so go ahead.
They never talked about how they came to that conclusion. They said, we see that there is a disparity between, performance between these groups of kids, and then just said, this is how we recognize inequitable processes are being done. But it's like, but how did you come to that conclusion? You just saw the numbers. You don't know how those numbers got that way.
Well, no, we already know, because there's a disparity. We know the answer must be racist practices. I mean, that's the only conclusion.
So,
obviously, all the teachers and all the administrators up to that point were being demonstrably and inherently racist, and they had to identify what policies were restricting Black kids from being as successful academically as Asian kids.
Okay, so if you look at a predominantly Black school or college or whatever, and you see that it shows that Black kids on average are doing better, that's clearly because the Black teachers there hate the white kids, right?
I assume so.
Okay, because that would be the logical conclusion, right? Those Black teachers, they hate white kids. They don't like teaching them.
Well,
that's why they're not doing that good.
And I've asked this in several other things. Okay, you have identified the problem. The problem being disparate outcomes for students based entirely on racial demographics. Okay, you have decided that the cause of this is policies and practices that your school is and has been performing or instituting for God knows how long. Okay. What policy and or practice or combination thereof, and I know I'm asking rhetorically and I probably won't get an answer, but I ask anyway. What policies or practices did you identify after your stringent put everything on the table philosophy? Did you find that were causing these things to happen, and how have you changed them? That would be my question for our speaker if I were the one talking to him, but I'm not. So we'll see what he says.
But then we put plans in place And over about a 3 to 5 year window, something as basic as having an aligned, guaranteed, and viable curriculum.
An aligned, guaranteed, and viable curriculum. So you're talking about like having a leveled set of expectations for your students? Or when you say aligned, I wonder if he'll say, did you standardize expectations at the school? And if they weren't before, why weren't they? And in the process of standardizing, aligning them or whatever, guaranteeing, were you lowering the standards? I could go, okay, well, let's see what he says.
For all students in all classrooms in all schools, that is the foundation of equity in education.
Okay, so having one standard set of expectations for everybody. Okay, well, how did that change your outcomes? Because I mean, if you leveled everything off, because I'm just imagining those bar graphs again, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so right now, if you imagine that bar graph again, you go from basically the black students on the one end, the Asian students on the other end. So the line's going up diagonally, right?
Presumably.
So if you level everything off to where, I don't know, everybody's exceeding the expectations.
They're lowering the bar for some.
And making it ridiculously easy for others, I guess. I mean, I don't know what he means by aligned, guaranteed curriculum. If you're talking about a standardized curriculum, grade to grade, class to class, school to school, okay, but then how does that compare to what you were doing previously? Is that still setting a level of achievement for students that effectively challenges them? I don't know what this means. Okay.
And then you overlay that with strong core beliefs and commitments that all children will achieve their full potential.
You can't guarantee that.
Apparently they can. It also, that will require prior knowledge of knowing exactly what all kids' full potentials are to guarantee that you're going to reach them, which there's no way you could know that.
Okay, so all children reach their full potential. So in the prior to your fixes model, all the kids in that, so were none of the kids reaching their full potential, or were the black kids being suppressed in some way from reaching their full potential, whereas the Asian kids somehow had a free ride? Like, why weren't the Asian kids suppressed like the black kids were? Like, who was... This is why these things are so frustrating. They give me this capsule sort of overview thing, and all these weird mysteries and questions almost never get answered, obviously.
Yeah, and considering Asians are, for the most part, in the overall, considered a minority group, what's the bias that these supposedly all white racist teachers, why are they favoring Asians? What's that about?
I keep seeing hashtags that say, stop Asian hate. So I don't know.
Yeah, because think about it. In an age of, or in a time where, Asian hate is prevalent, and, especially white people, they hate those fucking Asians, right? Why are they favoring them in every academic situation? Why are they giving them special treatment? Because that's what them being ahead means, right?
So far as I've been told, or at least so far as the negative space in the statistics is meant to tell me.
Uh-huh.
And that we're going to be inclusive, and that all kids will be valued. We've brought our profile of a graduate to bear for all students.
So prior to this, there were kids that were not valued? I mean, I have to assume if you're instituting these practices, then at some point in the relatively recent past, or at least prior to when you started doing this, that your school was mechanically, functionally, and just pro-racism, discrimination, diminishing students, and on and on and on?
I mean, it's a pretty safe assumption considering what he's saying.
For those of you listening at home, there's a card up right now that says FBISD, which I guess is the Fort Bend Independent School District. Inspire, equip, imagine. Profile of a graduate. Okay, public schools. Equipped with skills for life. Okay. A servant leader. What? A servant leader? Okay. An effective communicator. A critical thinker. Well, that's a dangerous prospect for this situation. A compassionate citizen, whatever that means. A collaborative team member. A lifelong learner.
Shall we translate all of these?
It sounds all very Hallmark. I'm just not quite sure what a servant leader means. Like, do I lead servants? Or am I a servant who is a leader, which sounds like a contradiction in terms?
It sounds like they're saying you lead with serving the people you're leading as the goal. As in, like a elected public servant? Because that would make sense.
Or are they talking about like servant, like public service? Like I'm a leader in serving others like that?
I'm not sure, but that's
I don't know either.
Weird.
Because I mean, that kind of aligns with a compassionate citizen, if that's how they mean it.
Who knows?
I don't know.
And so the whole tone of our work has shifted. And I'm proud because when I got here, we had several schools that were kind of F-rated, in need of recovery. Today, we have none.
Okay, again, is that because you have improved the overall education and excellence of the students in these schools, or because you aligned the curriculum, which sounds a lot like corporate speak for standardizing everything so nobody can lose? Because that's my suspicion. I don't have any idea because he hasn't given any details, but and there's a card here that says Fort Bend ISD has increased graduation rates and performance rates for all student groups. Again, is that because you've held your students all and focused on them all to the standard of excellence one would expect? Or have you lowered the standards so no one can lose? It's curious to me that you've used language that doesn't say one way or the other, but just kind of like dances around it. But I don't know. Advocatus Diaboli, servant leadership is a leadership philosophy in which the main goal of the leader is to serve Scribe. Okay, I was trying to give as generous a spin on what the possible meaning was as I could, because otherwise everything else sounded very weirdly sci-fi. But okay, I figured there was something like that. I hadn't really heard it put that way before.
You know, we've increased graduation rates for all student groups. We have raised performance for all student groups.
Also, they're not groups.
They are groups.
No, they're demographics.
No, man, they're groups. Look, we grouped them together. Those are the darkies over there, the crackers over here. They're groups, definitely groups.
Right.
We're still working on some of those equitable issues, though, especially with our poor children. We realized in our district, race can present an issue when it comes to behavior.
What? Wait, race can present an issue when it comes to behavior?
Now, why would you say that? That's an interesting claim to make.
Wait, I'm going to back up a couple of seconds. Thank you. This is Kyle. Hello, chat people in Lawton. Hello, Kyle. I want to hear that one again.
On some of those equitable issues, though, especially with our poor children, we realized in our district, race can present an issue when it comes to behavior and discipline. But
so first off, you say poor children, and then race becomes an issue in regards to behavior and discipline.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And discipline, but as of last year, for the first time, the district was proportionate according to the state standard on our discipline reports.
I have no idea what that's supposed to mean.
I don't think you're supposed to.
Proportional. So no one demographic was being disciplined more than another? Is that what you mean? Or wait, proportional. So if the student body is comprised of, 20% this demographic and 40% this demographic and 40% that demographic, disciplinary rates were proportional.
That's not an achievement because we already know they don't care about proportionality. Is that a word, or did I just make that up?
No, that I believe that is a word.
Yeah. As soon as I said it, I'm like, wait a minute. Are you making up shit? We know they don't care about that because as far as proportions are concerned, when it comes to arguments about representation, we are pretty much right where, or in most cases above that level when it comes to that thing. So we already know for a fact that they don't give a shit about that. So I'm not buying it.
Yeah, and Advocaz brings up a good point. So they just stop punishing people once they hit the target amount. Well, that's the thing. I mean, did you change your disciplinary standards to make? I mean, like, what was it? Was it Portland or somewhere where they decided to say, "Oh, we're just not going to start. We're not going to prosecute crimes up to this level now because they are reflections of poverty and addiction. They're not actually crimes anymore." I think it was Portland or maybe it was Seattle.
Something like that.
Yeah, so I'm sure their crime rate will drop when they stop arresting people for crimes. Yeah, there's a lot of unknowns going on in how he's structuring his achievements in this.
So we're all the indicators you would look at to measure whether you have an equitable environment. We are making significant progress or achieving those indicators.
But are they organic or are you manufacturing them? That's the question. A question you're not answering. You're being very. It's very bright and sunny. Everything. You see, I don't believe anything can be that positive, that good. There's got to be problems. No system is perfect. You didn't come in and say, "Oh, well, obviously the school's racist, and now it's no longer racist," and et cetera, et cetera. All this sounds very manipulative. It's like, oh yeah, our numbers look great. Yeah, but you can manufacture those numbers. And Ebony says, are they saying poor people don't discipline their kids depending on race? That's what it sounded like he was saying. Or he was conjoining social, I should say, economy with race and therefore outcome of behavior. I guess, anyway.
But it's taken a mindset from the top and the leadership team feeling passionate about it. And really where the work is done is having high accountability for the principals and the teachers and the schools to live, teach, and work in a way that's equitable.
Okay, again, I have no idea what that means. And having high accountability. Okay, so putting pressure on people to hit their numbers because it's all about numbers.
Yeah, that's what it seems like.
And when you put pressure on people to hit their numbers and you say you're going to align or I don't even know what that means, or standardize the curriculum, you're going to have proportional disciplinary rates and so on.
Also, unapologetically fire anybody who doesn't fall in line and make sure they hit those numbers. Interestingly enough, there's another kind of group and or organization that has similar concepts within their business model, and it is a business model. And you don't like them very much. They're called police. and you're not really a fan of that model, the way that they use it. But this sounds eerily similar. But, whatevs.
And to change the language around those kids, from those kids to our kids.
So you're going to language police those kids, who was saying, what? Okay, so you're going to start micromanaging people's words at the school too. I mean, okay, if you came in and you had a whole bunch of teachers who were not engaged, who felt so detached from their students that they didn't actually care or something else, okay, that would be a problem regardless of what the circumstance is. Okay, so if you had such a low morale or low sense of participation on the part of your faculty and teachers and stuff, okay, I'll grant you, not a good situation all around. All right. So if there was some kind of intellectual and or emotional distance of an unproductive nature between the teachers and the students, all right, I'll grant you that, I suppose. But the way that you just put that, changing language, kind of a red flag in my mind.
They're all our kids, and I'm going to be responsible for them.
Blue sky would mean that every child, first and foremost, every child has internet access in their household.
Okay. I don't see that as a bad goal, especially these days, especially under these circumstances. That's probably a benefit.
Yeah, that's not a bad thing to shoot for.
Yeah, and honestly, at this stage of the game, and again, for one of the few times that I'll lean on current events and say that it's reasonable, I think this is true at this point. Internet access should be a public utility.
Yeah,
it's really come to that point where it's no longer a luxury; it is a must-have.
Pretty much.
Now, I don't know how we move to that point, given the corporate interests at large and how that would change things. But, I think there should be for lack of a better phrase, a public option internet access setup, state to state, nationwide. And if corporations can offer something better, or they want to, join up with the streaming services and that kind of thing, but just basic internet access at this point should be as common as having telephone access in the home or water running in your house.
Well, I mean, one of the ways they can do it is just have the property owner or the landlord be responsible for that, and they could just add it to the fucking, or have it like every house has it. Because when you're a landlord or you're a property owner, you have to have internet access in the building, and then it's just gets added to the rent or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, and some places have that. It's true, but I think in general, not even just for apartment buildings or things, but just as a societal good, that internet access should be just a commonplace thing that is at least provided for, and at the very worst, the most basic access is supplemented by public taxes.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I know that's maybe controversial to some people, but we talked about this before. The advent of the pandemic, the lockdowns, and everything else, and we could go on about arguing about the necessity and efficacy of those things. But regardless, the situation that we have been put in has forced a level of technological evolution that probably would not have happened all by itself, except for the course of maybe several more years, if we hadn't all been sort of put into this pressure cooker of having to do it now. Necessity's mother of invention. And I think this situation has shown that internet is a necessity. It's no longer a luxury. And so I'm curious to find out as we go forward if that's going to change some minds about making internet a public utility.
That's a good point, Septus. You said if that was what I suggested was to happen, people wouldn't be able to choose their internet service provider, though. And lots of people would probably want to do that. So that's definitely worth noting.
Yeah, and Jim Healis says you got to define what minimum required internet access is, though. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I understand. Yeah, no, yeah, I know. And that's the thing is like how do you meter that? I would think of it as what can you get from a public library computer internet access? And yeah, and then corporations would provide other things. The other thing I kind of think about in the same tone is like, any cell phone that has a charge, you can call 911 even if it has no service on it, doesn't have a plan, whatever. If it's a cell phone and it has a charge, you can call 911. That is a basic sort of underlying backbone to everything as a public service. If there is something that could be created or some kind of like low-level basic access portal in a similar vein to that everyone would have access to regardless. I know I'm talking sci-fi at this point. I'm just sort of brainstorming, spitballing as I'm thinking about it. But anyway, let's move on. It took it on a tangent, but gosh, we have some extra time tonight, so why not?
To me, that's a utility.
Oh, hey! Hey, I haven't watched this. I'm on board with this lady right now. I'm on board with this lady. She has said the exact same thing I just said before. That's great. Great minds think alike. Okay, now please tell me how that wonderful common idea is going to be ruined by the next thing you say.
There's really no reason why it hasn't happened until now. There's certainly reasons, but no excuses. And it really is essential. It's a generational game changer for a family to be able to access the internet.
I am okay. This lady, I'm completely on board with so far. No arguments so far, but I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. Just waiting for it.
In their household. The other thing too that I think is going to be really, really important for a Blue Sky is for every child to have a device that they can use that is their own, whether the schools purchase it or the households purchase it. But to me, that's essential to have their own. We have too many families that have to share across multiple kids in the families. And we know that, that personal information that gets stored there and the time it takes to upload and download and all that, it just is taxing for kids to have to share with multiple others in their families.
Okay, now the one thing that occurs to me as I hear that is, I understand that might just be sort of the default of where we're at right now, but having a kid have their own separate device for whatever they're doing, doesn't that set up a division between the kids and their parents' involvement in their education?
Uh,
I mean, I know, like, okay, game it out a little bit. Okay, so kid goes out, regular everyday situation before the pandemic. Kid goes off to school, kid comes home with their homework, mom and dad help with the homework. And that's sort of boilerplate, pie in the sky kind of thing. How do you, I mean, if the device is only for school-based access, like this device connects you to the school network and that's it,
mm-hmm.
then maybe that's okay. But like giving some kid a smart pad that they can go off and watch Netflix instead of doing their homework or something. Yeah. So if it was a school, like, yeah, if it was something more like it belongs to the school, but it only accesses school resources and it's only used for, communication, teaching stuff. It's effectively an electronic textbook in that sense. I guess that wouldn't be too bad. I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, I'm sure most likely if it's provided by the school, it'll come built in with like parental controls and shit.
Yeah. I mean, or does not have the ability to do anything beyond school-based stuff, presumably.
Right. And I'm sure if it's provided by the parents, the school is going to have some kind of guidelines stating what kind of, access it should have. I don't know if it'll directly interfere with like the parents' ability to kind of co-op with the kid and do stuff or whatever, but I do think it'll cause some issues for, and I know this is one of those things where it's just like, well, you should be, but the not technically savvy,
Mm-hmm.
Because most people should be in this day and age, but they aren't.
No.
Not everybody. So.
Sean really says utilities aren't free. I didn't say that they were, but they are ubiquitous and available to everybody.
Yeah, it's illegal pretty much for you to stay in a place without those basic utilities, if I recall.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. It's like, and I'm not pitching that. Oh, this will just be like, oh, you snap your fingers and it's there, and there's no cost, there's no effort. And no, I'm not saying that at all. Like I said, tax money. It's going to come from tax money if it were to happen. But I think it, like I say, because of the last year or so, I think if there was ever a better argument for making basic internet access, whatever that equates to, a public utility, I think this is a good one. And so, like I say, so far in spirit, I'm not in opposition to this current speaker on things.
And so I would want to think of it in that way first, of just having access, just simple
basic needs, right?
Access, basic needs.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, Blue Sky is the basic needs that the schools provide go well beyond academics. And
okay. Where? Beyond academics to where?
And so we are in the middle of the pandemic right now, and we have sought waivers in order to ensure that families and children can get food. And we've been making sure that families can have access to health care even when there's not a hospital nearby.
I'm not opposing those notions. Why is that the school's responsibility?
Because they go way beyond academics.
I mean, on the food side, I guess I could see that because schools provide meals to kids, and sometimes families rely on the schools being able to provide meals to their kids as part of their diet and also part of their budget. So on that score, I guess I could see that. I'm confused as to what that has to do with internet access, or I don't know. I'm kind of.
We have social workers who are out. When the kids are not showing up for school or showing up for online learning, they're out and about, and they're recognizing that many of these children are becoming victims of domestic abuse in a way that we've not seen before.
They weren't being abused at home before the pandemic?
Well, I think they're saying that them being at home with their parents more often now is making them more susceptible.
Okay, yeah, more of a pressure cooker situation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right.
And so schools deal with this all the time. We've not dealt with it in this way or at this level. And I would think that in Blue Sky, we would actually have better systems in place to support children and families, so that it doesn't fall on the doorsteps of the school system itself all the time. And if it does, then we need to fund schools accordingly.
I mean, it is the unfortunate truth that a lot of things that schools and teachers and such are not technically intended to end up handling, because real life doesn't stop when a kid enters the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
So that's understandable. And obviously we're not going to get any more details on that. I'm just kind of curious as to what that has to do with internet access.
Well, I think she might have moved on from that.
Yeah, I guess. Well, I mean, she was talking about. But she kept talking about Blue Sky, and Blue Sky sounded like the initiative of like internet access for every child.
Yeah, that's what it sounded like initially, but I'm assuming they've decided to expand it to branch off to help provide these other services for reasons.
Yeah, that's okay. And like I say, all of those things sound good. I'm just, it sounded like a bit too much for one plate, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, there's a lot going on here, it seems.
Because I don't think that that's really happened.
Engaging the community. The community. Okay.
We are responsible for the community's two most important assets.
When I hear like we are responsible, okay, tell me that the parents are involved somewhere here, because if there's one thing that has disturbed me probably more than anything else, at least in a subtle fashion after watching so many educational videos, it is this constant attitude by teachers and administrators that they are the primary caretakers of children, that they are the primary caretakers of the surrounding community. They have elevated themselves to a place that isn't healthy, excludes or, in fact, just eliminates parental involvement in a child's development, and puts their own philosophies and ideologies as the primary driver of what students need. Now, I don't know what he's going to say next, but I just get, when I see something like that, I get twitchy. It's like an inbred thing at this point after watching all this stuff.
Well, I mean, if you recall, we did read that story about that teacher claiming that, the fact that there are parents out there who think that it's their sole responsibility, or they were talking about the notion that we cannot allow parents to be able to be these sole people to teach their kids about, life and who they're going to be. Like, we can't leave that into their hands because they're not responsible enough. Like, it has to be us. Yeah. I'm just like, who the fuck do you think you are?
Yeah. When you, and like I say, I understand, and it's not lost on me that teachers and schools and such, just as a consequence of real life, they end up wearing a lot more hats than just being a teacher. I get that. However, those extra hats have to be very small and very temporary, They cannot be equitable to their primary role. And the teachers, I think, should not be either encouraged or allowed to position themselves or declare themselves as anything more than what their primary role is, with an understanding that, sometimes you can't avoid getting involved in other stuff. But anyway, again, maybe I'm jumping the gun here. Let's see what he says. We are responsible for the community's two most important assets.
Their children and their money.
Okay, well, again, with the whole utility thing, have I watched a few of these things already or what?
Dude, their children and their money.
We are responsible for the community's two most important assets, their children and their money. Okay, do tell me how.
And people have a very vested interest in both of those things, and therefore in the school system.
Sounds like you do too. I mean, look, I get what he's saying. He's not wrong. Two of the most important assets to any family is their children and their money, because their children are important. Their money is needed to take care of their children.
Yeah.
But it sounds sinister, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It really does. It should be you're responsible for the two most important assets of the community: the education of children and children's basic needs during the school day. Now, of course, you want to talk about tax money and that kind of thing. Okay, fine, but whatever else. Yeah, it does sound a bit more beyond the scope of your mandate, the way that you put it. I'll be kind and put it that way until we hear more.
Now, we're a bureaucracy, and it's hard sometimes to break down the barriers of the bureaucracy, because we want to set up policy and procedures and processes and systems and rules and guidelines and just basically publish it. But we kind of see what happens when you do that and people don't like it.
Don't like it or find fault in it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Again, just rhetorical question. I wonder if our speaker finds anyone who opposes policies, procedures, and so on as simply not liking them rather than having a reasonable counterpoint.
Well, once again, we're talking about people who claim that they're responsible, for your money and your kids, and they want to set up rules, regulations, policies, and all this type of shit, like he said, that they want to set up that directly affect and regulate your money and your children. So they're like, there's some people who don't want us to have full control over that, but Yeah,
we have pessimists. We have those that lack faith.
Yeah, who don't believe that our ultimate goal of, absolute righteousness is not to be questioned. But, we have ways of dealing with those, Daves.
Then you start to have churn on your school board. It's negative. It's a negative environment.
Because they disagree with you?
Mm-hmm.
So people not liking something, as you trivialize the idea, you have churn on your school boards because not everybody's getting along with your program. It's negative. It's not that there is a necessary skepticism to some kind of overarching philosophy of, I don't even know what you're doing because you've been so cagey about saying anything in specificity. But okay, any naysayers must be culled, is what it sounds like. Thank you. This is Kyle. Quote, their children and their money. It does sound maniacal, especially if you're rubbing your hands together while you do it.
Mm-hmm.
The position, again, this is just my interpretation. The sense I get off of our current speaker is one of heavy is the head that wears the crown. This is a burden and a responsibility that I undertake with much hesitation. Now let me tell you about how we're kicking people out that don't agree with me. Yeah, okay.
So actually in our district, just in the last couple of years, we've really, we coined the phrase collaborative communities.
Oh, well, if I was using a bingo card, which I would be if this was a TEDx, but it's not actually a TEDx, that'd be a new buzzword buzz phrase. So just saying.
In policy several years ago. We talk about the idea there are things you need to communicate to communicate to your community, and that's all you're going to do is just communicate. You're just going to tell them.
Tell them what?
That we're doing this, whether you like it or not.
There's times you're going to consult with them where you're going to say, hey, give us your information. We're going to ask you to your feedback on this survey.
Again, it sounds like everyone outside of your little school board cabal is meant to be subservient to you.
Uh-huh.
Like, we communicate with you. Occasionally we'll consult with you. Aren't you guys public servants?
Yeah. What happened to that servant leadership shit? Doesn't that fall in the in your wheelhouse?
Don't you take your pay from the taxpayer? Okay.
Other times we're going to truly collaborate.
Oh, well, thank God for that. Otherwise, I mean, thank you for blessing us with your willingness to work with us at your discretion.
Truly collaborate. Like before, it's not really a collaboration. It's a you do what the fuck we tell you to do. But sometimes we do truly collaborate.
And bring them to the table with, to bring their ideas and thoughts. And then other times we're going to partner.
Wait, how is... Maybe it's just the poverty of my vocabulary. What is the difference between collaborating and partnering?
Well, partnering insinuates that both parties are equal in the decision making. Collaborating is, hey, you can help me out with this thing.
Oh, yeah, okay.
At least in a more literal term, that's how I take those phrases. So
yeah, I mean, if you look at the list, it is an ascension of how much we're going to allow the outside to be involved in what we're doing.
Right.
Yeah. So communicate, consult, collaborate, partner. With partner being the last step.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because everything before that, those are all the gates you must cross through before we'll actually treat you like an equal. And if you're not on the... So, wait. Does that mean that, like, the parents get to partner as a last resort with the teachers they're trusting their kids with?
Yeah.
Again, I don't know what he means. I can only interpret what I'm hearing.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe I'm just pessimistic that way, but this is what it sounds like to me.
Where they're bringing resources and they're bringing ideas, and it's more of a real mutual... public-private kind of partnership.
Public-private? Okay, again, I don't know how independent school districts operate place to place. I found out a little about the independent school districts in Minnesota. Excuse me. But as far as I understand it, unless it's different in different places, independent school districts are still recipients of public funding. So they're not a private concern. But even if they were, the parents are paying you then. They're not partners. They're your bosses. It's so bizarre how he's putting this. Thank you, Virgil G. This attitude is what leads to violent cops. I don't know what it leads to except just bizarre power mongering where teachers and educators think that they are the end-all be-all of not only the kids in their care, but the communities around them.
Mm-hmm.
Which is very disturbing.
Well, they're responsible for their money.
And their money, yeah, too. Yeah.
You're trying to be equitable.
Yes, we've heard that over and over and over again. What does that mean to you? I know what it means to me. Equality of outcome. Despite whatever ability might take someone further or otherwise, we can't have anybody succeed any more than anyone else because that looks bad on our numbers. That's what it sounds like to me, but I don't know what it means to you because you haven't told us. Except I guess at the top, he said it had like, race does not determine your outcome. But without explaining why those statistics were the way that they were, again, the only way I see you getting to that point where race doesn't determine your outcome is if you lower the bar to the point where no one fails, which doesn't help anybody, because that's what equity has become to mean to me at this point, equality of outcome, regardless of merit. So I wonder if you'll ever tell us what equitable is, or what that functionally looks like, what a functional example of an equitable process or system in a school district looks like.
Merit is a tool of white supremacy, sir.
Yes.
Meaning not equal, because equal means everybody gets the same.
Yeah?
Does it? Okay, well, if equal means everybody gets the same, then what does equitable mean?
Equitable is literally a different form of the word equal.
Well, yeah. Well, okay. So equity and equal in sort of, well, okay. Equity is a sort of philosophical term, means justice, means fairness. Okay.
Mhm.
Equal, depending how you look at it. So just for those of you out there who don't already understand, the common parlance right now, equality means equality, effectively in general sense, equality of opportunity. Everybody gets the same shot, but is not guaranteed the same outcome.
Right.
Yeah, the outcome is determined by ability, merit, etc. Sometimes luck, but otherwise, it's not guaranteed. All the doors are in front of you. Where you end up is not guaranteed. Equity means that no matter what, you will arrive at the same spot as everybody else, even if you're more talented than someone else or less talented than another person in the same situation. You'll all get the same merit badge. Because the standard has been set to such a place that no matter what happens, everybody gets the same outcome, which doesn't encourage anyone to excel in anything ever. Nope.
It keeps everybody on the same level. Nobody has to feel bad except for the people who want to succeed and do better. Fuck them, though. They don't. That's an evil notion to have. Wanting to do better than your fellow men is rooted in white supremacy, regardless of whatever color you are. So if you do feel that way, then you're part of the problem.
Yeah.
You got to get everybody on the same level, and we got to keep them there to ensure an equitable outcome.
Yeah. Accomplishment, competition, exceptional achievement. None of these things are allowable. Otherwise, someone else feels bad, or the numbers look bad, or it implies racism, whether it's there or not. Thank you, Point Curation. Harrison Bergeron is the best summary of equity. Yes. He has a Kurt Vonnegut, I believe. Yeah, the story Harrison Bergeron, short story. It is the most sort of like literal and outlandish depiction of an equitable society. If you ever want to see what that would look like, and then translate that into sort of the abstracts of bureaucracy and systems and everything else, read Harrison Bergeron. It's not that long of a story, as we learned earlier today in the actual TED Excellence about the slog of having to read through books. But it is a very good sort of allegory for the whole thing. Anyway, okay, so equal in our speaker's mind means everybody gets the same thing, which is not the general consensus, but okay, and then what?
Right, but when you're trying to be equitable, you sometimes find certain individuals in the community that says, you're taking from my child to give to that child, or you're watering down a curriculum.
That's exactly what you would have to do to achieve an equitable outcome for every student.
Yeah, you are literally establishing and laying down the groundwork to do exactly that, unless you have some type of magical explanation as to how you accomplish said goal without doing that, because I would love to hear it.
Yes.
Or you're causing me to lose, the experience or the resources in my school to give to that school. And what we have to get to a point of is understanding that when you are meeting students where they are and not necessarily where you want them to be, that is going to require different forms of resources and different amounts of resources.
Whoa. Meeting students where they are rather than where you want them to be.
Exactly.
How do you encourage advancement? How do you encourage achievement? He's not going to give us specifics here, but so if you have a student who currently sits at, I don't know how you'd put it, let's say a C average, okay? You meet them where they are. You don't challenge them to go beyond that?
Nope. You meet them where they are, and you just kind of work with that, and then you elevate their lack of accomplishment to the same level to that of a person who is a straight A student. So that way they don't have to feel as bad as a straight A student. And they both will be treated the same. As far as reward systems go, they both will be rewarded the same, because, we don't want anybody feeling special.
Yeah. So he says we don't want to make things equal because that means everybody gets the same thing. But then he's telling us that the complaints he receives are you're trying to even out everything, even in places where either they don't need it or they do need it, but everybody gets the same thing. Like, again, if I was using a bingo card, contradicts own pointer argument would be circled right now.
Yeah, he's contradicting the hell out of his argument right now. Those two things can't mix.
No.
And I can use some of our schools, for example. We have a particular school where the free and reduced lunch population is under 20%.
Free and reduced lunch population is under 20%. What? Okay, what has that got to do with academics? What's that got to do with student outcomes in English class, like the statistics you put up at the beginning? Okay, this is your first and go-to example. Free and reduced lunch population, 20% versus 90%.
Right? Compared to a school on the other side of town, that's almost 90% free.
Okay, so are you telling me that economic situations are different in different parts of a town?
Reduced lunch. The school that's 90% free and reduced lunch are going to need additional resources because the kids who have more financial means, they're getting the access and they're having the experiences that these students on the other side of town are not.
Yeah, but that's not the argument that's being had here. Nobody is talking about you adding additional resources to schools that need them, because no reasonable person would argue against that. If this school has less resources based on whatever, and you're utilizing whatever to make sure that they get the stuff that they need to keep people on the same level, that's fine. But when you are taking away actively from another school or another area or another program in order to provide that equitable, outcome, say, for example, okay, well, this school only has 20%, that one has 90%, so we're going to take like 30% from this school and give it to that one so we can, get the numbers as close as possible. That's a completely different thing, because in the situation that's presented, he didn't state that, he's stating that people are complaining that things are being taken away. So somebody else is losing out for these other schools to gain.
Well, here's the other thing I don't get. In his example, if you've got school A on one side of the tracks that needs more free and reduced lunches than school B on the other side of the tracks, isn't the money coming from school B that is paying for the lunches on a regular basis?
Yeah.
Isn't that going to be going over to help pay for the lunches at the other school? And
that's what I'm saying. Like that. Why else would he make that argument? Why else would that be a complaint? If the other school is completely unaffected, but you are still somehow managing to provide more resources to another school, there shouldn't be an issue. Nobody should have a problem. But that can't be the case.
And student lunches is a weird example to give when we're not talking about. Anyway, thank you, Point Curation. Satsu is making too much sense. They don't use logic.
I see what you did there.
He's trying to. I don't know what he's doing here, but he's already contradicted himself. He's given a very weak example as his first and only example in this whole presentation, and it doesn't track in my mind. Okay.
So it is our responsibility as a school division to ensure that we're allocating the funds for what kids need, not what's equal to every school division, because every child needs something different.
But that would make it not equitable, right?
Think about it. Yeah, if every child needs something different, then you're going to have to treat children differently based on their specific situations.
Yeah, you have to literally do away with equitability in order to solve this problem, right? Yeah. Or am I stupid? Equitability cannot be the foundation of your program if that is your philosophy. That doesn't make any sense, because if you were truly equitable, it wouldn't matter the amount of needs that one school has over another. You would just make sure that all the numbers were equal. the same way you do with race and academics. Why is it different for food? What the fuck?
Yeah. What? Okay. My brain is melting as I listen to this. Okay.
How do we actually educate the populations that you're trying to serve around equity, and how to make the appropriate asks from the district on what they need so that you could adapt and respond to their specific needs? Because I think that's the other part of it. There's been a lot of times where educators have said, this is the best way to do something to a population, and oftentimes maybe it hasn't actually met the needs of that population.
Well, you could start by having a clear definition of what the fuck it is you're doing.
Yeah. Define equity. Okay. It is such an abstract term. I would need a concrete, active example of what is an equitable outcome. Show me at the end of the school year what, in a perfect world, what is an equitable outcome? What is the breakdown of, I don't know, the GPA spread of your graduating class? I don't know what opportunities are afforded these kids after they've graduated. I'm assuming high school, let's say, or whatever else, onto their next step in. I mean, what does it look like? I mean, give me an actual concrete. This is a process that we have in place to achieve the outcome that we state, right? I mean, presumably they have something written down somewhere that says this is how we're going to do this thing in order to achieve "quote unquote" equity. What is that thing? Give me an example, just one. I mean, there's got to be one practice or procedure or guide or rule or something that could be articulated fairly briefly, elevator pitch style, that is meant to achieve equity. Are you going to tell us that? Okay, because if you're going to educate the people around about what equity is, when you'd think that'd be relatively simple, but okay, it's got to be more complicated. It's something you have to sell to the community, which already gives me a little bit of hesitation. How do you do that?
That's why it's so key to have, for example, we have a family and community engagement department.
Family and Community Engagement Center, FACE Center. Clever. For those of you listening at home, there's a card up that says Family and Community Engagement Center. The FACE Center involves families in the educational experience of students. Okay, well, I suppose if the families are not doing that themselves at home, but of course, if they're not doing that themselves at home, why would they bother going to a FACE Center?
Because it sounds cool.
Through free information, well, if you're publicly funded, it sure as fuck should be. Resources, workshops, and fun activities for students and their families. We help connect you and your family to the academic achievement of your children. That is a sad, sad statement. Not necessarily an untrue one, because in my perfect world, of course, parents would already, by default, be having an active role in their students' academic achievement.
Normally.
But again, if they're not already doing so at home, having an external center that encourages it. Okay, I'll let our speaker tell us, but if they're not going to attend this center, how are they going to learn about equity? And if you are the ones responsible for the kids and their money in the first place, do they even have a choice in the matter about how you teach their kids?
Doesn't seem like it, do it?
In Alexandria City Public Schools. And specifically, it was developed to work with our underrepresented populations.
So not equity.
Yeah, not equity.
Okay, so it's meant to work with specific racial demographics.
Mm.
Okay, because those racial demographics are inherently in need of that service. Is that what I'm hearing? Okay.
Within our city, these are communities and voices that are typically not heard.
Because of their skin color? Says you. Okay.
They may not know how to navigate the public education system.
That's presumptuous.
They may not know how to get a photo ID. You know, it's tough.
Yeah.
It's tough. It's a difficult thing to figure out how to do. I mean, if you're of a particular, personage, you might find it difficult to navigate the educational system. Tell me more.
Or the American system, because many of our families are immigrants in Alexandria City Public Schools.
If they are, naturalized citizens, if they are, if they took the citizenship test, they already by requirement have some actual knowledge of how to navigate the quote unquote American system. Otherwise, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to make sure that you're meeting the community where they are, and that you're utilizing leaders within those communities to hear the actual voices of the people.
That all sounds like fluff.
You mean talking to the group leaders to determine what's good for the whole? That sounds interesting.
And as I say all that and be very sarcastic about it, at the same time, we're talking about, well, ultimately, the welfare of children.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have a child, regardless of what their parents did or otherwise, they are not responsible for their parents' decisions and so on and so forth. So, I might be awfully cynical and stuff about when it comes to immigration and all on, but okay, setting that aside, still not quite jazzed about the assumptions of someone's ability to quote unquote navigate the system if they're part of a particular marginalized community or whatever he said before. I always find that a little, I don't know what's a good word for
that. Presumptuous?
Yeah, I guess that's a $5 word for it. Sure. Okay.
What should a district be asking the community so that they can actually get the right information? We all know that depending on how you ask the question, you get the answers you want to.
Are you as dumb as we assume you are?
That's it.
we think you're pretty fucking stupid. Is that true?
Yeah, I don't want this to go over your head. So maybe I could, use basic shapes on a piece of paper with a crayon to spell it out for you.
Yeah, I've described this in the simplest terms I could. Is this registering? Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if your kind could really grasp this concept.
Do I have to stratify how I instruct people because I look at them on a color code? Oh my God.
But I think the first thing you should always ask any community person is, what do you know about us?
What?
Huh?
What do you know about us? Well, purportedly, you're the school I'm sending my kids to.
Well, I think that he's talking about the organization, right?
Okay, this guy, if I remember correctly, he represents an independent school. No, it was Alexandria Public Schools. Sorry, no, Alexandria Public Schools. What do you know about us? Okay, ask the community, what do you know about? I'm just trying to think back to like my experience growing up. Like, I lived within walking distance, relatively speaking, of my elementary school when I grew up, and I lived in a very quiet sort of neighborhood kind of thing, and my mom attended PTA meetings and things like that, and they helped out with my homework and stuff like that. I'm just trying to think, like, how much beyond the basics, what do you know about us? Okay, maybe he'll explain. I just find that question for some reason my brain is breaking at that notion or that concept, given my experience with public education. Like, it was up to the community to interrogate the school. I mean, and to a certain extent, you should. I mean, I would hope that parents are taking an active role in their kids' education. They're overseeing to some extent what they're being taught and engaging with them, because especially these days, as we're seeing right here, not having a role in your kid's education may be feeding your child to an ideologue without your knowing it.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe in some backwards way, he's giving good advice here. I'm not quite sure.
Right, because that gives you some insight to what they believe about the organization and what they've heard about the organization.
The organization. Okay.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. I thought it sounded like he was talking about the organization, not the.
Well, I know, but the organization, I mean, Alexandria Public Schools, it sounds like a public school district. The organization, he's talking about in such like corporate terms. Maybe that's where my disconnect is. Or maybe I don't understand what the Alexandria Public Schools are. I mean, is that a private concern? It doesn't sound like it. So I'm confused, obviously.
And they might say, I don't know anything about you, right? So, that gives you just a clearer understanding of where they stand in regards to, knowledge about the organization. And then I think that then you can take that opportunity to begin to talk about the mission, the vision, and the core values.
You're saying nothing.
Hold on. I'll back up.
Okay.
What was the question again? Because I feel like he dodged the fuck out of the question.
Well, he has. He dodged the fuck out of both questions so far because he hasn't defined equity. So let's back up to.
Because I was sitting there waiting because I'm like, where's the answer? And then he jumped to something else, and I'm like, that also is not the answer. So what the fuck was the question again?
Okay, what question should the district, again, as far as I can tell, this guy represents a public school district. Okay, he's not representing like a private school or some independent concern. He's talking about the organization. Okay, so I'm going to back up a little bit more. Okay, so what was the first question he was asked? Okay, how do we educate people around equity? And I think, if I remember correctly, our interviewer was asking, like, how do you get the community on board with this?
Right.
Right, okay. And then he talked about how they have this center, this family center, and then a bunch of other malarkey. We have to meet our communities where they are to hear the actual voices of the people because certain demographics don't know how to navigate educational systems or something. Which none. I don't know how any of that actually answers the question. It's all very high level, broad abstracts again. And then the interviewer goes on, what questions should the district be asking the community?
Right. That was the one question I was waiting for. Like what? And he said,
yeah,
instead of asking them anything, or like what questions should you be asking the community about what they want? He said, ask them what they know about us.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how is that helping?
Should it be like, what questions should the community be asking the district? Because the community is funding the district. The community is supposedly being served by the district, not the other way around.
Well, we were originally talking about the fact that they don't know how to navigate the system. So that's why he asked the question, well, how do you ask them? Do you not know how to navigate the system? Or like, what kind of questions do you ask them about their lack of knowledge on how to deal with this whole situation? And he was like, well, ask them what they know about us. And I'm like, but the fuck does that solve?
Okay.
Yeah, that was weird.
Talk about the mission, the vision, and the core values.
Well, the mission should be to educate the children. The vision should be every child gets a good education. And I mean, I don't hear a whole lot about academics in this.
Nope.
This is the one thing that always disturbs me. Well, I mean, it's a lot of things that disturb me, obviously, but I mean, common themes I see in the modern educational presentations or presentations by administrators on all this stuff. They rarely ever bring up the parents, or they refer to the parents in these broad terms like the community.
Mm-hmm.
And they rarely ever focus actually on the academic goals. They talk about outcomes based on demographics, whether it's gender or race or whatever. But they rarely ever talk about the actual specifics of, academic achievement, academic goals, academic standards, except in the most ethereal sense of the words. Okay.
Well, for me, I just remember a lot of times when I heard officials that represent schools and districts and stuff, they always talked about the what was it, like the the goal for excellence or something, or what was it, like the something of excellence or whatever, I can't remember exactly, but they were constantly talking about, you know, we want you to strive for excellence. We want people to do their best. We want them to be their best. So when we send them out into the world, they can, you know, contribute to society. That seems to have kind of gone out of the window as of late. Or standard of excellence, maybe. I don't know.
Well, it usually just comes down to the standard that I always have in my mind is that schools should be responsible for teaching kids how to think, not what to think. And so when we get down to these things of philosophies and equity and I'm like, are you teaching how to think, or are you teaching what to think? Have that question in your mind whenever you listen to one of these guys start talking about all their high ideals and everything, and see where that takes you.
Of any organization, because really those three components should drive all of the work of the school division and of the school.
The work. For those of you that have seen my earlier videos in my channel, yes, I have a curriculum of fear called The Work. And it's kind of creepy the way that becomes such a sort of almost spiritual mantra of mission in education of late.
I think that's why it's key, especially when you're developing a strategic plan. Like, it is so important to have that vision so that you are able to explain where the organization is trying to go in the future, and that you have a mission of, this is what we stand for right now, this is why we exist today, and then having some core values so that you're able to express, this is what we believe.
You're not saying anything.
Nope.
You are literally saying nothing. This is about as substantive, irate bear, as a corporate buzzword meeting that I've been in. I can't count how many times. I'm just like talking nothing. It all sounds, it's sophistry. It all sounds really intelligent. It all sounds really relevant to something, but it's completely without substance whatsoever.
Yeah, it's just buzzword. It's just a bunch of interesting sounding words that makes you think like, wow, this guy is saying something. I'm not quite sure what it is, but it sounds like it's important.
This is why we believe it. And I think that if you can start at that place and you can have some two-way, some discourse around that, I think that's a starting point. You then have an open door to begin to talk about, okay, well, these are some of our challenges, and these are some of the things that we've been faced with.
Is one of those challenges not being able to navigate the educational system based on your demographic?
It's one of those challenges not being able to navigate whatever the fuck it is you're telling me right now.
Yeah, is it that you're trying to talk over my head when you're not actually, in reality, what you're saying pretty much hits just about where my belly button is. It's like, you're not saying anything, nothing at all. You're an educator. This is how you communicate with the community, sounding like you know more than they do when you're saying nothing. Okay. Thank you. Point curation. Duck speak. Duck speak? Like
Scribe, you just lost like 3 friend points for that one.
Oh.
Obstacles and barriers that we've been faced with, and this is how we're planning to overcome. You can start
give us an obstacle or a barrier and tell us how you either plan to or have overcome it. Why? And I swear to God, I ask this in almost every presentation, regardless of what it is. The absolute imperative to avoid specificity.
Mm-hmm.
No examples or poor examples. Like I mentioned this the other night, the Journal of the American Medical Association. And the guy was talking about, what is structural racism? And the guy says, truck routes through neighborhoods. I'm not kidding. Go. Anybody wants to see it? Go check out. You have to go back a couple of videos. It was the Pearl JAMA of Wisdom stream, and you can't find that podcast anymore because they took it down. I've actually had people come to me asking me for my copy because I apparently have the only one left on the planet. Anyway, yeah. Give me an example of a systemic racism. Well, you see, truck routes going through poor neighborhoods and putting out all the exhaust and everything. Yeah, that's Really? Truck routes? And we're talking about two medical professionals here, and that's what he comes up with. It increases asthma in people in those neighborhoods, and da 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 da. And I'm like, okay, so the equitable solution would be to have truck routes through every residential neighborhood? What are you saying? What are you talking about? And and our speaker here, no specificity, no examples. I mean, you would think, and I know I'm asking too much, you would think that a administrator of a school district who has been employing these processes, these systems, these solutions for some period of time would be able to say, here's where we started. We implemented this program, and as a direct result of changing this policy or doing this thing or whatever else, here's where our numbers are today. You'd think he'd be crowing about a success story in his district. Even if it was the most minuscule thing he could come up with, at least show some kind of change, some kind of improvement, something where our theory was proved correct. You'd think he'd be able to have a go-to example, but nothing. Nothing. And the one example he does bring up is a hypothetical, which I'm sure is actually real somewhere, where you have disparities in lunch programs between schools. Okay, well, was that an actual situation in your district? Did you find a solution to that? What was your solution to that? It doesn't even give that. So thank you, Ebony. This guy really loves his word salad. Yeah. I mean, he's saying nothing, but using a whole lot of words to do it. And that does not, if I was a parent of a child that was going to this district, that would not instill a whole lot of confidence in me about his mission or his vision.
I'm just picturing myself right now, jotting down a script in order to have a debate with this person, and just on a yellow Post-it note, writing down repeatedly, could you give us an example?
Yeah.
And that's it. No other, that's my whole script. It's just every time he stops talking, just say, can you give us an example?
Well, I mean, and you're in the exact same position I am over and over again in TEDx talks or educational videos or whatever else. And to a certain extent, okay, I can understand that when someone is being condensed into a 5-minute promo video, they can't necessarily go chapter and verse on everything. Mm-hmm. But in the previous Curriculum of Fear video I did, where you have a professional consultant for schools saying how she wants to introduce, anti-racism things into the school and so on and so forth, because we need to do these things and we need to identify those processes in the schools that lead to these inequitable outcomes and on and on. And I'm just like, and obviously I can only ever ask rhetorically. I'm like, okay, well, you're a professional. You've been doing this for years. This is your job. You've gone to school after school. You've been hired by New York City public schools and all this other stuff. You must know of a common mistake that schools make that lead to the outcomes that you want to avoid. You must know of at least one. And I understand you're a professional. You do this for a living. You don't want to give away all your secret recipe or nothing. But you can at least give me a gimme. It's just a good faith effort. What is one common process, procedure, policy, whatever else that you've seen in schools that always needs correcting? You can at least give me that one, right? You can at least, the lowest level, lowest hanging fruit. What is that? Right? And at no point do they ever get to that. Just give me an example. I mean, I'm not going to promise that whatever example you give is going to convince me, but I sure as hell am not going to be convinced in the absence of example. Right? But you're right. Yeah, Post-it note. Give me an example. Active examples, not hypotheticals, not some pie in the sky kind of thing, where the problem that you are outlining was encountered with the solution you are proposing, and what was the outcome? Something like that. It's a common complaint, and people that have been watching TED Excellence know how often I say that same fucking thing. Okay, we're almost done.
Getting into your goals and the outcomes that you're seeking. But you got to start with that mission, that vision, and the core values first.
Again, nothing. Pablum. You said nothing. Absolutely nothing.
Welcome back.
Oh, well, hi, Anthony. How you doing? You got your level again there? Is that your power object? Is that like your teddy bear or your security blanket?
And now that we've talked about equity and community engagement,
you've talked around them. I don't think you've talked about them. But okay, you do you.
That was a little surprise for you guys. And the next episode, we're going to talk about how we do it. And
oh, I got the wrong episode. Well, I'm gonna have. I think I know what my Sunday stream is going to be now.
I'm about to say, see you guys next Thursday.
Yeah, see you next Thursday. No, Sunday stream might be episode 3 or whatever of this, because now I want to know the nuts and bolts of it. Because if this was just the appetizer, I want to hear the specifics. So I'm going to be looking for episode 3.
the behavioral change that's required, the heart that's required. And I'll also have some tips. So check out the next episode. Talk to you soon.
Heart and tips. Just the tip.
To me, it goes back to that every person that's part of our school system feels valued and feels that they are part of the solution.
So it's a feelings game.
I like feelings.
I like feeling certain people.
That's awfully creepy. But you know what? You do you.
I often do.
We start by building confidence in the people that are approaching this work.
The work. If there's ever a creepier phrase that I've come to know over the years, it's people just sort of whittling it all down to the work. It really does take on an almost religious or cultish connotation. It really does. Well, I've already subscribed. I don't know that I liked it, but either way. So final thoughts there, Satsu.
Why do you hate me?
Because you don't know how to get a photo ID.
Yeah, that is a thing that I've never quite figured out.
You navigate the educational system, it's not your fault. I don't blame you for it. You're just, inherently incapable of these things. That's what CNN tells me. That's what our speakers here have told me.
Well, it's very difficult to figure that stuff out when you're as brown as I am.
God, they're so fucking evil. Jesus Christ.
Look, you can't expect me to know that. You think my brown parents taught me? What makes you think they know?
Oh, and just listening to this, these are grown adults in charge of things. They are responsible for educating children, and this is the stuff they are pushing out there. These are ideas that they're promoting as explanations for why they feel the need to do the things that they're doing. And if you change the era, right? If you change the skin colors of some of our speakers, you could be held blameless for thinking we're looking at some very different organizations at play. As Satsu has said over and over lately, you take all of the current rhetoric around anti-racism, wokeness, and so on, you take it back to the 50s to certain costume-wearing individuals in the South, and they'd be right on board.
Yeah, they were like,
Same
oh,
philosophy.
shit.
Take it out of context, just give them the plain text and don't tell them where it came from. Oh, boy, that sounds great. That's what the future looks like? Oh, boy. Okay, well, there you go, everyone. And with that, I'm going to call this episode of Curriculum of TEDx of the Night Dark to a close. I hope you all enjoyed this Frankenstein monster of a presentation. That was the intent, if you couldn't tell. But yes, I'll give a couple minutes here for any other questions or comments. But then after that, I think we're going to, let's see here. Let's see if I can jazz things up a little bit for the closing here. And do this here. Will that work? I think that'll work. And then if I do this and then that. There we go. That's a little bit more pleasant, I suppose.
I'm in space.
In space. Gulf City Johnny Blaze, I enjoyed this show. I'm glad you did. Check your logic. Why is it always the 50s? Stereotypical, back when the bad old days were the bad old days, and when certain groups were backed into a corner by the changes of society and became particularly virulent. That kind of thing. Ebony Williams, do these more often. Do what more often? I don't know what you're talking about. Sean Uli, I request my money back. Well, I'm sorry, but I'm responsible for 2 important assets. That's your money and your time, which you've spent with us. Mike R. Scarlett, nice April Fool's Day prank. Thoroughly enjoyed it. What prank? What prank? How were you pranked? I don't understand what you guys are talking about. Stunlock says, Satsu, I got free time tonight. You want to do VR stuff, or are you busy?
We haven't played any VR games in a while. I haven't played my VR headset in a while. God damn it.
All right.
I have to see if it's charged.
Brutus Lupus Rex. Oh, Lauds, did you hear Microsoft Underwater Explorers found the USS Johnston? It's the destroyer that fought Yamato and holds the record for deepest wreck site, 21,000 feet deep. Damn. That is some Laurentine Abyssal kind of stuff. That's some Abyss kind of stuff. And if you guys know why I say Laurentine Abyssal, and we're paying attention to the very start of the show before everything went kind of goofy, you'll get the reference because you're a nerd like I am. Stunlock, I got that zombie game we were talking about, and mine is charging for the past few minutes, so I'm ready to go.
Okay, yeah. Well, let me put my shit on the charger now. Then I don't know how late you plan on being up, but I want to at least give it a little bit so we can test it out.
All right. Let's see. Aaron Medley, Satsu, will you be getting Outsiders?
I think they meant Outriders.
Outriders, yeah.
If maybe.
Gulf City says, you mean the good old days when cars and music were great? Oh, you mean the 90s? No, I'm not talking about the 90s. I'm talking about the 50s. 50s where everything was terrible and everything was in black and white. Literally and figuratively, if you look at the footage. Let's see. Check your log. Do you remember April Fool's Day 2019 when you guys did the show format backwards? I have no idea what you're talking about. I don't even know. What does April Fool's got to do with anything that's happening right now?
I'm not sure.
I don't know. Go see Peter Books, 379. No, the 50s. You thought the 50s were when cars and music were cool? How old are you? Let's see. Yeah, well, anyway. I think I'll call that here. Everyone, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Do appreciate it. If you'd like to hear more from Satsu or myself, you can find both of us tomorrow night, Friday night, on Satsu 2 Senses channel at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern for the next episode of The Lords of the Night, where we'll talk about the news of the day, news stories you submit, what we've been up to on the internet, and then your questions and comments. Everyone, thank you for your attendance. Thank you so much to the moderators for keeping an eye on things, even though everyone is so well behaved, there's really not much for you to do. To everyone who donated, thank you so much for your generosity. We really do appreciate it, and honestly and sincerely humbled by it every time it occurs. Satsu, thank you for joining me as always. Everyone, your lives make us sad, and we will see you tomorrow.
Bye, guys.
And per tradition, taking out my copy of People magazine.
Nani?
And today's secret word is April Fools.
What? What is that? What the fuck is that?